Okay, we're live on Facebook. Hey, everyone. Okay, as soon as this broadcast comes up, I'm going to share it into the Revolutionary Woman group. Share, copy the link, say what I'm doing out loud.
Yeah.
Go and find the group. Okay. Right, here we go. I'm sharing the link. Brilliant. Okay, that is posting live. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for bearing with me there for just a couple of moments while I did some technical things. Facebook's just changed how Zoom goes, and well, that's what happened. So welcome, everyone. I am Morna Haist, the founder of Revolutionary Woman Global, and we convene global conversations, events, and epic learning journeys for women shaping the future of the planet, like the beautiful Sarah Amy Glensor Best, who is joining us today from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Welcome, Sarah.
Welcome, kia ora.
Kia ora. What time is it for you? What day is it?
It's 9 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, the 13th.
Thursday the 13th.
I'm coming to you from your future.
I love that. I love that. That's classic. Okay, and it looks like we've got some folks joining us, and that is brilliant. I'm going to get to the original broadcast. I'm not actually sure how I'm going to be able to see comments with the way we're doing it. That's cool. We'll roll with it. We'll get into it. So actually, because we're streaming on my business page, which I don't normally do, normally this interview series happens in the Revolutionary Woman Global group. But because of the changes, I'm streaming onto the page and then sharing into the group. So if you're a person who follows Revolutionary Woman Global and you're not in the group, this is what you're missing out on. So every week I interview an amazing agent of change from around the planet who is a member of our community, and we give each other some love, and it's a place to become more visible, to share our message, and to share the amazing work we're doing in the world. So, Sarah, I've got a few things that I want to kick off with, but the first thing I want to say is that you are a pretty remarkable woman, and you know, I've been following your journey for I'm not going to say how long now. How long have we've known each other? I'm not sure, but I've watched you really grow into a thought leader, you know, a person who has developed this body of work and this way of, I guess, working with people and a philosophy around parenting and the way you want the world to be. And I'm really curious about that. So I didn't give a formal introduction for Sarah because I'm actually going to firstly ask you to tell us, what would you like us to know about your background and how you became the Sarah Amy Glensor Best that you are now?
Wow, that's a story. Yeah. Well, maybe not. I grew up with very community-minded, activist, liberal parents who were out there trying to make a difference in the world. You know, and sometimes that was at the expense of being at home with us, I grant. However, I've always been inspired with the work that my parents have done in New Zealand around racism, sexism, and trying to create a more just world. And so that's always been an inspiration for me. And then during my my teenage years, by the time I was 16, I'd already been present for 2 home births, which was just quite amazing, and been around really incredible parents who were very conscious about what they were doing, who weren't just, you know, just, oh yeah, it'll be all right, kids will turn out fine. They were really consciously working with their children to build relationships and hold the children as sacred and as individual beings right from the word go. And so this inspired me a lot. And these same people who I'd been around, who I'd been inspired by, were there when I had my own children and said to me, go to Play Centre. And that's how Morna and I met. Play Centre being a parent cooperative where we all learn about child development and we work together to basically bring up each other's children. And it was quite an incredible environment for me and my children. And it was where I realised that I'm really interested in and quite good at facilitation, working with people, and helping people understand what's going on for young children. I did quite a bit of training through the Play Centre curriculum and was inspired by master facilitators like Morna, experienced incredible work from lots of people. And I'm starting to really carve out my own journey from that start. And about 10 years ago, actually nearly 12 years ago, I heard about Brainwave Trust Aotearoa, which is an organisation which gathers the research on the child and adolescent brain development from around the world and turns it into something that people can understand and really relate to their parenting and their caregiving of children. And I became an educator, a kaiako, for Brainwave 10 years ago. And so I've got my finger on the pulse.
Seriously?
I know, 10 years.
Okay, what?
So,
okay,
I'm aware of the research that underpins these messages about how important these early years are and the relationships between the parent and the child, or the caregiver and the child, whoever the child is around the most, is so critical to how that child goes on to think, feel and behave through their lives. So that just blew my mind to realise that we can actually be privileged enough to be involved in creating these human beings, supporting the creation of these human beings that can go on and make a big difference in the world. So
well, I love that, because it's really, I mean, I remember the first time I encountered Brainwave, and that was also through my Play Centre experience. I went to a Brainwave talk, and I found it firstly very legitimizing, maybe is the word I want to use, of the instinctual ideas that I had around my own parenting, that it felt really important to be there. And it's curious, there's lots of different places we want to go, and I want to get to your book, and I want to get to the work that you're doing now shortly. And we'll get there, because there's a couple of threads that I want to pick up here, because one of the messages that I really took away from that is that we're wired for good enough parenting, and that was such a relief to me, because as a conscious parent, I think sometimes those of us who are on this conscious journey can overburden ourselves with what that needs to look like. And then equally on the other side of that coin, it was also a relief to me as someone who is a mother who, and we're all like this, who deeply cares about these human beings. Like, I don't want to fuck it up, right? And so it was a relief. Firstly, and secondly, it steeled my resolve around the kinds of environments that are important for babies and young children, and that we, and I guess kind of letting go of this idea, which I think is very prevalent in our modern Western societies anyway, that babies need to be educated and sent to other places to receive an education, or to be, and maybe I'm not articulating that well, but that also the kinds of environments that we've created for childcare, for example, and I think there are all kinds of situations that can work, but we haven't designed them to actually work for children and families. You know, babies were never meant to be in a situation where there's 10 babies and one caregiver.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess that's my segue into asking you about, you wrote a book. Hold it up. I was going to hold up my copy, but I lent it out. Changing the world as child's play. And I want to use this really to riff off, what do you mean by changing the world as child's play? And what is your philosophy around all of this?
Yeah. I started, I guess, writing this book probably about 10 years ago, actually.
No, was it? Really? Okay.
probably even longer. And I just started to realize, it was before my youngest child was born, and she's 12 now. So
wow.
I remember doing laps in a pool and just coming up with these huge numbers of ideas of things that parents and caregivers can do with children that are really supporting the child. Rather than meeting the needs of the adult, they're actually supporting the child's needs. And that all of this can be turned into play. And then how important these things are in building the blocks, the foundations for that child and how they're going to see the world through their lives. And so my original idea was 365 things to do with children. And then it kind of and changed and became this book, Changing the World as Child's Play, especially as I wove in the neuroscience understanding and the real life experiences information. Rather than typical play, we think of, play equals toys. No, play can be doing the dishes, play can be having a conversation where we're actually quite mad at each other and we're working it through. All of these things can be play. And there's a chapter, one of my favorite chapters in the book is called I'm So Angry I Could Eat the Sun. And
that's awesome.
That one's really there for my youngest child, who would just get so mad. And that was one way that we got her to express how she was feeling and then work that through. What skills are these? These are amazing skills that many adults out in the world don't have. And so I wanted to put them out there and say, hey, we can be doing these things with children, and we can be loving being parents and caregivers of these amazing beings.
Oh gosh, I love what you're saying, and I think that we, you're correct about everyday experiences being able to be play, and also, I just wanted to riff off the idea of toys, full stop, because I think sometimes, we don't even need them, to be honest. No. Children don't actually need toys. There are plenty of toys in our environments already that we can have fun with, and I think that also takes play more into the conscious realm as well, instead of it being something that's being consumed, I guess, in a way, by just sitting in front of I don't know why I'm thinking of Lego no, I'm not thinking of Lego. Lego's not a good example. I don't know what I'm
Lego's a great toy.
But Lego's an amazing toy. Yeah, Lego's an amazing toy. We love Lego. And what's coming to mind is just thinking about so many of the times when I was a young mother that was so stressful, going to the grocery store, for example, or actually doing anything out in public with my younger daughter. There were so many times in the mall where she would decide she was done, she was finished. And when she decided she was done, she'd be on the floor of the mall and she wasn't moving. She wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't happening.
He was communicating very clearly to you.
Very, very clearly to me. And it was so interesting just to notice the particular dance that I went through with my youngest, because I would oscillate between, right, come on, we're going to, or sometimes I'd be playing peekaboo. Or, and I guess what I want to say here before I come back to you is play just makes everything so much more fun and less stressful.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I've realized is we can reframe any situation as play, as joyful, rather than as this terrible thing that we are going to drown in. Which is what parenting feels like sometimes. I remember about a week after my first daughter was born and thinking, oh, this is forever. The relief of it hit me. And I was like, oh.
It's my holiday. What's time to knock off? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not actually going to stop being a mother here. And that was pretty, an interesting moment. And I'm sure we all go through that at various times. And absolutely, I mean, I love being a mum. And sometimes I'd really like out for a little while,
Totally legitimate. Totally legitimate. And the other, we all relate. I can't see the heads nodding, but they are. They are, yeah. And I apologize too, I can't see the comments right now. I can't figure out how to get to those when we're broadcasting live, but don't worry about that. If you are here, let us know. Let us know where you're tuning in from and what this is bringing out for you.
Yeah.
I think the other thing about play that I love is that it gives us permission to experience what's actually happening. So what I've noticed with both of my children is that it's way healthier when those emotions are able to be expressed. Yeah. And one of the big kind of learning edges for me as a parent was to create a space in my home where emotions were accepted, welcomed, and that we could play with them a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so you freak out over something. Well, that doesn't mean that you are a person who freaks out over things. It means like how can we take these moments that and instead of shutting them down and saying things like, well, that's not what we do in our family, or, you know, what are some ways that we can, I guess, develop a more playful relationship, especially with some of those really big emotions?
Yeah. So this is where the importance of how we're communicating comes in, because play and communication are two strong pillars of what I'm focusing on. And they all hinge on the quality of the relationship between the adult and the child. It's really important. And so communication wise, we can say, oh, you're so terrible. You know, you're not allowed to behave like this. Or we could say, wow, that's a really big emotion you're having right now. How can I help you? And one of them is more powerful than the other, you know, for both the adult and the child. And, you know, I've got teenagers, I got 3 now, and I've been called an effing bitch, you know, and some people, you know, look at me in shock when I say that. Yeah. And then the next shocking thing I say is that when I've had that happen to me, I've said to her, wow, you're really pissed off. Hey, I'm here for you. Come see me when you're ready.
Yeah. That's right. Instead of what is typically the other automatic response to that, you can't talk to me like that.
That's not how you behave. You're going to have a terrible life. And granted, I haven't always done it perfect. I'm pretty sure I've had the chat about how you're going to get up.
Totally. Well, this is also where relationship comes in, right? Because
yes.
You know, and there are just so many facets to this, and repair, and when we're not always going to get it right. We're human beings.
Rupture and repair is a thing, and it's an important thing. It helps build resilience in both of us. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think what I was hearing in some of the distinction and discernment, and speaking of teenagers, one has just come home, and some folks may hear the dog barking in the background. It's all good. Nobody knows I'm on a live video either, so somebody could just come in their own.
Yeah, my children are home from school today, actually. Surprise! So I've got 3 teenagers in the house too.
Yeah, I love it. So when I was hearing you mention those 2 different examples of one sounded like shame and one sounded like a conversation that could go somewhere. And the distinction that I make is, you know, when we say things when we conflate the behavior with the person, you know, for example, by saying, you know, oh, well, you're a bad person, that's really different from saying you're experiencing a big emotion.
Yeah.
Right? It's not saying
really different.
Really different, because we are not our emotions. But I think often it can be easy to do that, and then, you know, we develop so many stories about what our emotions are. And the other thing that I know for sure is, you know, I've always also kind of looked for measurements of how I'm doing as a parent by how my children behave in different situations. Not so much how they behave in my home, because what I know is that if you're creating a truly safe, open environment for your children, then these emotions are going to be in your home. It's the opposite. I think maybe there's this idea that if you're doing everything right, everything will be like kumbaya, and we're all like, no. Because home is where our children experiment, right, with all of the ranges of who they are and their emotions.
If they feel safe, when they feel safe. But the really good news is that our little people, our young people and babies and children, they need one main adult. Particularly in those baby early years, they need one main adult who gives a huge damn about them and who has a strong relationship. If they have more than one, awesome. And most children do have the privilege of more, but we only need the one. If we have that strong relationship, that helps build the circuits in our brain and body for relationship, for how to be in relationship with people, which is so important. And
which is so important. And what I know from your work and the work of Brainwave is that so much of that is occurring in the 0 to 3.
Yeah.
Right. So much of that wiring is being put in place. And it's not that we can't alter that down the line, but at some level we can't. Like there are definitely, right, there are definitely things occurring in that time that are critically important. And I think in so many ways it makes sense to me. You know, we're one of the only species that is born dependent, like wholly dependent for a significant amount of time on an adult, on another human being to keep us alive.
And we're born with a hugely adaptive brain.
Right.
You know, we are born to be molded by the environment that we find ourselves in. And so this is where the danger of the more negative, judging, shame-filled communications is huge. And it actually creates stories and a trauma for the child as they grow through their lives. I look around, you know, when I'm walking around and I see traumatized children staring out of adult eyes. And when I say traumatized, I'm not meaning necessarily that they've all had terrible domestic violence going on or abuse and neglect. Not, I mean, yes, there's that happening, and in large amounts in New Zealand and many parts of the world. However, I'm meaning the small traumas and the unnecessary traumas, like being labeled, you know, you're greedy, you're chubby, you're annoying, you're stupid. These things are, you know, coming in and becoming the truth. They're being laid down as the truth for these children. And I am wanting to work to remove some of those unnecessary traumas, help parents understand the dangers of labeling. Even you are good, you are pretty, the positive ones, they are not helpful either.
They're not helpful either. That's right.
Helpful. And the blame, shame, humiliation way that we all work in our societies. You were saying it was really hard to change this, Morna. That's because it's everywhere. It's in our society, in the West and in many parts of the world, that we need to crush the child, that we need to judge them because they won't know right and wrong otherwise. And these are all creating these unnecessary traumas that we then have to work through later. And it's really hard to do it later. Let's try and minimize the unnecessary traumas when they're younger.
So yeah, it's really curious to notice what's coming up for me. And what's coming up for me actually is some self-analysis and self-judgment, actually, which is just
not great. We can just say, I feel it, you know, and okay, so what can I do now? But
I feel it, what can I do now? Yeah, thank you for that little coaching on the spot. That was super useful. Because I think one of the big tension points and paradoxes maybe for me as a parent is, and especially as a mother, and I say especially as a mother because hormonally we are wired differently. Hormonally we are given the responsibility to keep the species alive. That is in our hormonal makeup, and it's different from men. Some of the most, I guess, guilt and shameful moments in my life are around some of the ways that I have behaved towards my children at various points. And I'll just put my hand up and say it. And I know that I'm not alone. Yeah, I know that I'm not alone because I'm a human being.
Yeah.
And I also forgive myself because I am a human. And like I said, you know, I think if I look at some of the evolutionary points between the way I was parented and the way I'm parenting, repair was not a thing in my home.
No.
There was no acknowledgement of anything. You move on, that's it. And that's something that I really wanted to model and change in my home, that, we're going to fuck it up. We're going to get it wrong. Yeah. And equally, when you're talking about relationships, okay, what do I want to say about this? Because I guess I don't want mums who might be watching or parents who are watching to start doing like an inventory of all of the shitty things they've ever done and feel bad. So can you speak to that, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, just remember that we learned how to parent when we were, if you could see my hand, it's way down by my knees, when we were 2. We learned how to parent when we were very, very young. That was laid down for us. Okay, so when we're in our moments of stress, often those behaviours will come out. There was shouting that happened in my family. Yep, so when I get stressed, that's often what comes out. And so these are they feel automatic, and over time we can shift them. It's hard work though, isn't it? Yeah. But what we need to do is remember that every change that we make and every shift we make is one that will make it easier for our children for later on. So if we can keep doing those little moments of catching ourselves, doing the apologies, do the repair. Same in my family. I don't remember my parents apologizing to me. They do now. They didn't when I was a child. And we can do those things, and that will make a difference for our children. And looking back over generations, every generation has done things differently. I've had this conversation, wonderful conversations with my mother about her parenting and how her mother was parented and so on. Now, the other thing is that most of the time is what applies. So remember you were saying about
good enough. I think that's what I was meaning. Yeah.
So yeah, this is the next thing. So yes, we are making these incremental changes, and that's good. Keep doing those. And when we stuff it up, okay, most of the time we're not stuffing it up. And now when I say most of the time, I'm meaning every day there'll be something that we don't do well, maybe several things, but there's still a majority, 70, 80% of the time when we're showing care and love and affection and attention for our children and doing what we consider to be good parenting. Yeah, we are doing that most of the time, and that is what counts in the brain.
I love that. I love that that's what counts. I love that that's what counts. And it brings to mind actually a conversation that we just had in our global dojo, which Sarah and I are both a part of, but you haven't been to today's session yet. What came up is one of the amazing women was talking about mothering herself. And I think that's one of the things that I want to talk about, and we're kind of at time, but we're going to go over a little bit if it's okay with you, because I've got a couple of other things I want to cover. So I know that a lot of my parenting has been around learning to parent myself.
Yeah.
And to parent myself in the way that I wanted to be parented when I was a baby and a young child and a young person. And mothering myself and learning how to meet my own needs and give myself what I need so that I can show up more consciously and competently more often. Not always, because let's let go of that. Yep. We're all on our own learning journey, but I'm on the journey. But learning to parent myself first, and really so many examples I could give of this, but it's one thing to invite your children not to be thinking shameful thoughts, but if you're sitting in your bedroom at night in your own shame storm, it's not overly helpful.
Yes.
So how do we I'm just going to ask the question, how do we do this?
Yeah. So yeah, you're right about it's often easier to do for others. However, we will do it even better for others if we can do it for ourselves. So practicing that judgment-free talking to ourselves, avoiding the labels, noticing that little voice going, yes, this always happens. No, that's a story. This is happening right now. What can I do differently? Catching the language. This is where it becomes really about communication and how the words that we're using, because our words create the world, even the world's in our head. The words in our head. So
and the world's words and words.
Yeah, that's right. So if we can be practicing that for ourselves, then we're actually transforming ourselves. And in the same time, if we've got children around us, we're also transforming them. And that's where we make even more impact in the world. I'll just say one thing. My logo is a swirl of rainbow ripples. And I might have I don't know if you can see it there. There we go.
Yes.
So that is about the ripples of change. And every time we interact with the world, and especially when we interact with children, we're creating ripples in the world. And when we interact with children, it becomes part of their being. And therefore, we're actually creating even bigger ripples in the world, rather than when we interact with adults who it may not make as big a difference for, whereas with a child, we're creating their being, their basic beliefs, core values. I know this is huge. So we can make even bigger ripples when we really focus on how we're interacting with our children. And to do that positively, we need to look after ourselves as well.
And I love what you're saying through so many lenses. I'm going to draw attention to it through the lens of being a thought leader and an agent of change. We're all attempting to leverage change at the elements of the system that we believe we can act in. And I think how we as a society work together to raise babies and young children is essential. And I'm actually just noticing what I'm saying there, because I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that, and this maybe is just a personal belief, so I'll hold it as that and see what comes. We're not designed to parent alone. We've created these silos of families in our modern life, or just, a mother with a child or whatever. No, the old adage of it taking a village, man, it takes all of us. And especially for us as parents, we need those relationships around us to create the basket of everything that we need, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on that statement, that phrase that we know, it takes a village to raise a child, this doesn't mean that mum has the baby, passes baby out of the tent and says, here, village, raise my child. It's that the village actually wraps the mother and baby, or the main caregiver and baby, and supports them through their journey so that they can do a beautiful job of that. And what helps even more is if we adults have in our past been around children, been around positive ways of interacting with children. Often we haven't, because again, the siloing thing, we send our children off to school, we have our old people in old people's homes, and the people in the middle are all working, doing the professional office thing. And we're not connecting as communities and villages used to. And so for many people, they have a baby and they haven't been around babies and children. And so that instinct which is supposed to come isn't necessarily sparked off. That's why we seem to need all these books and inspiration, and then that it just blows our mind, because there's too many different perspectives. And that's where the neuroscience comes in. That's where I hinge, or really base everything I'm talking about on what we know scientifically, which is actually proving now what Indigenous cultures have known for generations. So that helps unpick what's popular parenting rubbish, I like to call it, and what's actually true that we need to know about children. What are their true needs and wants? That's a struggle we have. That's something I do workshops on. And
I'm fascinated in that. I want to get to that.
And maybe another time.
We'll finish off with how folks can work with you and get in touch with you. I think a lot of what you're saying is a little bit of medicine, a little bit of an antidote to, I think and I know that I keep fixating on women, and that's just my lens as one. Parents in general, I feel like we're, and definitely the sort of parent generation behind us, I think we were one of the first generations of parents to be attempting to raise children in the social media world, in this world where the benchmark of what it means to at the same time as kind of cultural support is going down, the message, pressures are going up. Yeah. And I think that's a devastating combination, particularly for the primary caregiver who may be enmeshed. And I know for me, when my first daughter was born in Canada and I was essentially alone, Andreas was here, but I didn't have a community around me. I went onto Amazon and I bought all the books. I did it, and I went through and I picked the philosophy, which was attachment parenting, that relate, and then, like any good, like A grade, A type woman, I went, right, I'm just going to be the best at this, and because if I don't, I'm going to fuck it up, and I'm going to fuck my kid up for their life. And and it took me until Molly was about 10 months old, where actually I think it's typical in so many stories where it was all unraveling and I hadn't slept for, it felt like 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Right, where I kind of sat down with Andreas and I said, okay, I think women and parents have been having babies for a long time. Maybe there's something that I know.
Yes. Yes. Trust that heart, trust that gut. Yeah. And having your own needs met makes a big difference to how we treat children as well. And so understanding our own needs for support, for inspiration, for eating and drinking well, looking after ourselves, and putting down the dishes and going and having a sleep. We're so not good at that because we think that what's actually needed is a clean house. No, what's actually needed is to have a sleep and to focus on the needs of then what our children have as well.
Absolutely. And to have some discernment around timing. And I say this because it's a personal thing for me. Of course, we're all on our own journey of growing up, right, alongside our children to whatever degree. Always. Annoyingly, it seems to be never ending. And it's really taken me a wee stretch of time, meaning years, to really get to the point where I firstly realized the negative return almost when I enter into situations where I already know that I'm not in the right frame of mind to be able to consciously act in a way that's needed, and to be able to say to my family, I can't do this right now, or Mum isn't in a space where she can be effective right now. I need space. I'm going to be in the bath for 2 hours. Yeah. And, not just prioritize my own needs at that moment, but to actually recognize that I cannot be effective in the moment.
Absolutely. And another thing we can do is we can be assertive with the children if they're old enough for us to do that. Hey, I need to have this time. We can also ask for help. And this is something that I feel is
what?
A struggle, in our Western women world, and probably Western men as well, but certainly not for women. We really struggle with the idea of asking for help. And that has been my lifesaver, is asking for help. Just really saying, hey, can we do ride sharing to play centre? Or look, for the next couple of months, can you just take my daughter to play centre? I did that when I was pregnant with the youngest one, and it was a total lifesaver for me. And letting people help as well. Often people offer and we go, oh, no, I'm all right. No. I'm
well,
super mum. We think, but we don't want to appear vulnerable, and I believe community is such where it's a pay it forward, and not necessarily you're going to return exactly the same favor to exactly the same person. If we can let go of that need for it to be a mutual exchange in that moment, let go of that, it will all work out in the end. And get the support that we need. Ask for it, accept it, search for it. That's what I got with Play Centre. I just was so grateful for that. And that can be family for people who, any group can be family if you don't have family around as well. We can always create community and family.
We can create community and family. Yeah. And I really want to underscore one point you made, and then we'll circle it to the end here. And the point is, I think we need to relearn, and you and I have had an experience of being in the Play Centre community, so we have this kind of really deep level of understanding of what community really means, especially in that context. And I think that if you're in a true community, the support is going to be there. And I think one of the mistakes we make is assuming everyone's busy, everyone's feeling like us, they don't have the, but if you're in a community, there's always going to be one or two people who have the ability to provide support. Maybe it's not these people over here, maybe it's not us at that time, but I think that was one of the beautiful things that I learned in that community, was this idea of responsive and reciprocal relationships, that it isn't necessarily that one-on-one reciprocity, but it's a reciprocity within a community. And I'm really lucky to be in so many circles of women that offer that, and it's a true privilege alongside you and the other women that we're in community with. Okay, Sarah, I could literally talk to you all day, of course, and I wish we were kind of doing a parenting masterclass right now, because that would be super amazing. We should make that happen.
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. What is the work that you're focusing on right now? How can folks find you, and how can folks work with you?
Right, so I'm in the process of working out how I'm getting myself out into the world as a global thought leader. So I've got a website which I can put in the chat, sarahagbest.global, and I'm working on that to make sure people have an understanding of what I do. I facilitate workshops, and those are, have been a bit in trouble with COVID, but I'm looking at ways I can do that actually globally and really using technology. Yes. So I ran a series of play shops on Zoom in March, which was great. And I created videos with those, and people can buy those videos. I've got a Facebook group for parents called Real Parenting and Communication. And I'm wanting to really build up that group of support that can be a community where we really support each other, offer ideas, ask for help, and so that's one way you can get in touch. And yeah, I'm looking to write more books. So there's this one which if you're in North America, Red Leaf Press, they have copies, and it's in New Zealand, Australia as well. I think it's on Amazon and Book Depository. And also, if you go to my website, you can get a free PDF download and join my mail list. So that's another way to do that. But I see many books. I see maybe an online school with lots of courses. I see lots of talks, speaking engagements, facilitating workshops, coaching as well. I'm doing one-on-one coaching for people to help understand what it is that they're needing, and help find ways to create the sort of joy that they want to in their parenting and be the parent they want to be.
Oh, I love that.
It's the whole range of things I'm working on at the moment. And so the global, the dojo, the Revolutionary Woman Dojo.
Well, we managed to plug that a few times. So
everyone is helping. It's just wonderful. I feel like I'm really energized at the moment. Parenting retreats. I've got some in the pipeline. There's so many exciting things that I'm.
That is so exciting.
I want to transform the world's parenting. Get us to see what it could be.
Oh, I think that, and boy, it could be like that too, and so what I'm going to invite you to do, Sarah, is below the video, especially in the Revolutionary Woman group, if you could post all of the links that you just shared, would be amazing. Sure. And I just want to say, if you're a parent who is, I was going to say struggling, but I actually want to say just being a parent. Because, you know what I mean? Right. There is no instruction manual, and there's Sarah. So if you
tuning in with your child, that's really what it is. But I can help you tune in with who your child is, and really connect with them in the way that they need, and will be helpful for you as well.
That's amazing. So reach out to Sarah if you want to chat with her one-on-one. Sarah will pop the links to her group below, and her website and her book, and all the amazing ways that you can get in touch with her. And I'm just going to put you on the spot slightly, Sarah, as we close out. Not that any of this hasn't been putting you on the spot, but for a parent who is watching this or listening to the replay and is struggling or is feeling those feelings of shame, guilt, regret, what would you say to that person?
Firstly, you're not alone. Secondly, okay, you may be feeling those feelings of shame and guilt. How about let's find a way of transforming those feelings into, I don't like what I've just done, or I don't like what I've been doing. I don't feel good about that. What am I going to do differently? And ask for help. And ask your heart as well. Your heart and your gut know so much about what is needed in the moment, and there's lots of supports out there. So go and ask for that help rather than staying stuck.
Amazing. Sarah Amy Glensor, best parenting thought leader, author, changing the world extraordinaire. It's been an absolute honor and privilege to have this conversation with you today, and looking forward to seeing you shortly in another context.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Morna.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, let me stop the live.